My next guest on the road home, powered by the Truckers Service Association, is Steve Wilhelms, President and CEO of NextRisk. Over 25 years experience in the safety and risk side of the trucking industry. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, John. My pleasure to be here.
Well, man, we spent 45 minutes just talking about everything going on in the industry before we hit the record button. It's so good to have someone like yourself on here with so much industry experience. And what we want to focus on today, Steve, is the FMCSA hours of service regs are changing again, scheduled to take place on September 29th. Man, what can you share about the hours of service rules changes that are coming up?
Well, I think the FMCSA did a fairly decent job in listening to what the industry had to say and trying to give additional flexibility to truck drivers, trucking companies, without compromising safety in that area. So there's basically four different changes, and we'll go over those four changes and show whether they'll provide a little bit of leniency, a little bit of extra working hours, and then some of the aspects where you really have to do some planning, especially as it surrounds the sleeper berth provision.
Well, Steve, let's start with the ELD. That's something I'm on the technology side of our industry. ELDs, electronic logging devices, and it's become such a critical part of the tractor, for Class 8 trucks. What do people need to do with their ELD devices to make sure they work with this new rule change?
Well, John, that is a $10,000 question. And the companies are working, all the ELD providers, if they haven't provided you with a sample solution, are working to do that to make sure that once September 29th rolls over, that the software will then be calculating on the new hours of service rules. Now, whoever your safety compliance, whoever takes care of ELDs, obviously, I'm sure has been long into this before, this week, obviously. But, there have been some issues in the past, but I think they've ironed out most of the kinks. But you just need to, as a driver, you need to be aware of the device functioning according to the new rules. And if not, you need to immediately start documenting it so you don't get held up or something at roadside inspections.
Yeah, that's great information, Steve. And you mentioned the four changes. Let's start with the short haul exemption. The research I've done, I know that's going to be impacted. What can you share about the short haul exemption?
Well, really, the nice thing about the short haul exemption, and this comes from several different perspectives. Number one is it takes it from the 100 air mile radius to the 150 air mile radius, which in Texas we've always operated under the 150 air mile radius. So that's no big change for us. However, for a lot of the other states, it will be a change to operate in that 150 air mile radius with a 14-hour shift. But there are a couple of key factors, and that is it doesn't mean that you get to extend your time or anything like that, but it basically gives you two things. One is you don't have to fill out a record of duty status, a log. It may mean that you don't have to have an ELD, and you don't have to partake in the 30-minute rest break. The couple of things that you need to do is you need to make sure that you start and end at the same location. So if you left Kansas City, Kansas, your terminal in Kansas City, Kansas, and you went out and did your 150 air mile radius, you have to come back to Kansas City, Kansas within that 14-hour shift, right? So that gives you one of the two parameters. The other thing that can get a little tricky is the driver does not have to be able to produce a time card if he stopped roadside. He doesn't have to keep that record with him, but if he's asked, he needs to be able to gather that record from his motor carrier, whether it's through a fax at the weigh station, an email. But, people have called this the time card exemption for years. So there is a way that they have to be able to produce to the roadside inspector that they are using the time card, not just, oh, I didn't do my log today, I'm going to say I'm on a time card exemption, because that will be, backed up by other things such as supporting documents, load trip, bill of ladings, and that type of thing.
That's some good information, Steve. The second one that we want to talk about is adverse driving conditions, and we know, you and I are both based in Texas. Louisiana, just got hit with some hurricanes, and there's flooding. Up north, we're rolling into some winter months. Talk to us a little bit about what's going to change with adverse driving conditions.
Sure, and what I'd like to do just at first, John, is to say that there's a difference between adverse driving conditions and then having an exemption due to that the FMCSA or the state issues due to a natural disaster, right? So the adverse driving conditions are sometimes often mistaken. And what it allows, the new rule allows up to 2 additional hours. It extends the driving window up to 2 additional hours for unforeseen circumstances. And let me explain that as it's been explained to me by the FMCSA and several others in the industry. A traffic congestion on I-35 going into Houston or going into Dallas or going into Austin, that's not an unforeseen circumstance, right? We know that traffic's going to be bad, so having a normal traffic delay is not an unforeseen circumstance. To make that clear, if you are traveling down, let's say, just I-35 in the 7 p.m., 8 p.m. time frame, and all at once there is a collision that is now shut down the highway, and no one's going anywhere. We actually had one of these in Richardson the other night. No one's going anywhere for a couple of hours. That can be used as an adverse driving condition example, but you need to make sure that you document that at the time that takes place.
That's good information.
As much
right
documentation, and as much documentation as you can have. Like, okay, we were 5 vehicles behind the main crash, and there was no way to turn the truck around. We were told by law enforcement, stay, right? And so that's one of the things. The more documentation on adverse driving conditions, the less problem you'll have, whether it's roadside or whether they come in to do a compliance review or what they call now an intervention. So documentation is key. The other one caveat that they threw in that really makes sense, and this was part of a lawsuit that's taken place over the past couple of years, is if you know that you're going across, let's say, I-80, and there's a storm coming across I-80 in the wintertime, and it's going to dump 2 feet of snow, and you know that before dispatch, before you pick up the load, that is not considered an adverse driving condition exception, because you had the expectation that it was going to get bad while you're out there. So that's one thing in the driver's responsibility and the dispatcher's responsibility that they need to communicate, right? So if they know that's going to happen, like with these storms coming up, right? Without an exemption, these storms could cause trucks to get stuck for, a lot longer than 2 hours. So you need to look at that, consider that. So the key there is load planning.
Steve, one thing I'm seeing, and it's a little ways off, but with all the data integration and all the APIs that are, computers talking to other computers, weather is starting to get integrated into load planning much more so than just, 4, 5, 6 years ago. So that moving forward, that might be one of the variables that goes into some of the load planning, dispatch systems, big weather front moving in. So could help in some of that information to make better decisions to keep the driver safe.
Yeah, John, you're exactly right. In some discussions that are going along is so, maybe this guy is only going to, instead of taking this load the entire distance, maybe we're going to have him take this load, drop it off early, turn around and get a load back, drop it at a shorter mileage distance and then we can pick that load up once the weather clears and someone else can take it the rest of the way. So yeah, weather has become an important factor. I mean, you think about now everything that's going on in California. How could you possibly load plan around that?
Yeah, crazy times. You're referring to the fires and other things that are going on in California. Things can and will change, Steve. So, every day, load planners, drivers, have to make decisions about how they're going to go about their day and their routes, and they need to be prepared to make changes.
Correct, and it does put a driver in not really a tough spot, but he's responsible for his safety, right? And it does put him in a spot to have that conversation with the dispatcher or the fleet manager of, hey, did you know that this big storm's coming across? So they need to be aware of it. The driver needs to be aware of it just as much as the load planners and dispatchers do. So you're absolutely right, John. Under the adverse driving conditions, so if you're using the adverse driving conditions, right, and if you're using a short haul exemption and you need to use that 2-hour adverse driving conditions, then that knocks you out of the exemption and you have to, if you can't return to your duty location, then you have to, if you can't return to your duty location, then you have to complete a log for that day. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but that's the only thing that, because that is on the short haul, you have to start and stop at the same location.
Okay.
If because of weather, you can't stop at the same location, if you get cut short, then then you must do a log for that day.
Steve, next up, let's talk about the change in the 30-minute rest break requirement.
Okay. The good thing about the 30-minute rest break requirement is you should never, after the end of September, and it may take you a couple of days, but you should never receive another 30-minute rest break violation. And I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, but they've made it so easy on the 30-minute rest break because what they have done is they require the 30-minute rest break now to occur 8 hours after driving time versus 8 hours off of on duty time. So that's number one. It doesn't have to be just on duty time. It can be 8 hours into your actual drive time. The other thing, and I think this is probably the most applicable to drivers out there, is that you can combine now your 30-minute rest break with your on-duty not driving. You can combine it with sleeper berth, and then obviously with off-duty time. So before, you could only satisfy that requirement with off-duty time and sleeper berth. Now you can satisfy that with on-duty not driving, which that can mean you're getting fuel. If you stop to grab something to eat and go to the restroom, all of that now can be combined. There is one thing, is that say you spend, 10 minutes inside the facility, and then you spend another 20 minutes on duty, not driving. That 30-minute rest break has to be a consecutive 30 minutes. So you can't break it up into, I got my 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here within an hour time. That won't work. But they've made it simple enough, that you can now look for the combination of 20 minutes to 10 minutes or a full 30 minutes or 40 minutes, whatever, right? There's got to be a minimum of 30 minutes. And you can have two duty statuses, not a problem at all. However, you need to make sure that you change that duty status on your ELD, right? If you're combining those two time frames, and then it has to be consecutive. So, was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago with some enforcement guys, and they literally said, "We don't think we'll ever write another one of these violations."
Well, that's good news.
As it happens, yeah. So they made it easy, made it simple.
Steve, next up, this I know this was a little more detail. The sleeper berth provision. What can you share with the American trucker out there on what's changing come September 29th?
So the sleeper berth provision, they allowed you a little bit more modification. You still have to get your minimum 10 hours off duty. But they've allowed, instead of just the 8-2 split, they've allowed now like a 7-3 split. And but 2 hours, at least 2 hours of that needs to be spent either inside or outside the sleeper berth. If you're doing 8-2, 7-3 the same way, and that doesn't count against your, against your 14-hour window, right? So some examples of this, and this is also where it's going to take some load planning, John, or maybe not so much load planning, some time management, is that if you decide you're going to take your 3-hour break and you're going to get 3 hours in here, then within your 14-hour day, you're going to have to grab, within that 24-hour window, you're going to have to grab another 7 hours. And we've seen a lot of examples of this, of people who get their 3 and then they wait too long to take their 7, and now they're going to be over their hours, and it's going to be hard to get out of. And people will see this more and more as time goes on with a new rule change. And I think that's going to cause one of the bigger headaches is the 2 periods, whether it's 7-3 or 8-2, don't get combined within the qualifying time period. And I think that's going to be where some instructions, some question and answer, and some trial and error, so to speak, is going to happen. And that will, that's probably the most challenging thing. There's a lot of things that went into that, and that was, the best they could come up with, given some other circumstances.
Well, Steve, some of the fleets I've been talking to, and especially the drivers, they've looked at this and they say, "Hey, why can't we get more flexibility with the 14 hours on duty rule?" And I know you've had some discussions around this as well. What would you say to that?
Yeah, so John, great question. When you start looking at Q&A and comments and blogs, that seems to be like 90% of the comment or question. Why can't we have more flexibility with those 14 hours? Several reasons, but the most I guess truthful reason, the most truthful reason that we have, and the most transparent reason, is that the FMCSA thought that if they put that more flexibility in there, that there would be so much negative comments, too much negative comments by the safety advocacy groups, the Mothers Against Tired Truckers, the advocacy groups that usually, speak up against, no, they can't do. Now you're saying they can work more in a day. Who works more in a day than 14 hours? But that's why that flexibility was not included in this first rule. Now, there are going to be some additional studies coming out to see about adding a little bit more flexibility to the 14-hour on-duty day, and we'll look forward to seeing what the comment period has on that particular test scenario.
Well, Steve, I know you started off your career in law enforcement, so we'll kind of wrap up with you mentioned just the other night you went on some ride-alongs. I know that's where your passion is, being out there, really where the rubber meets the road. What's enforcement going to be looking for at roadside inspections?
Well, first of all, and I'll tell you this, John, first of all, they were a lot happier that enforcement was a lot happier that road check got pushed back from the middle of the summer to the beginning of fall.
Yeah.
It wasn't, so as much, Gatorade and that kind of stuff was probably not consumed as it normally is. But one of the things, and we just had a conversation with local DPS here in Texas a couple of weeks ago, is documentation from the drivers. Documentation of the events that happen. If they're documenting it in their notes from their, on their CDL, that anytime, like on the adverse driving conditions, that needs to be documented. You need to break that up. If you have a timesheet that you can carry with you, carry that timesheet with you, or keep it on, an app on your phone that shows that you're not, due to the record of duty status, you are using the short haul exception. The more data that you can provide to them, the better. And then the other thing I'd say is, for those of you who use ELDs, and this is kind of it doesn't really have that much to do with the new rule change, but the ability to demonstrate the knowledge of your ability to use the ELD to be able to transfer the data to the EROD system, so the officer's not standing with the driver beside their truck. Those are all things that they look for to try to make that inspection go faster, make it easier, make it safer. But I can't express how much that documentation will get you further down the road faster than not having that documentation at all. It's the effort, and it's what's contained in the documentation that will help.
Well, Steve, one thing that has not changed, if you were subject to hours of service before, you're subject to hours of service now. There's just some changes, and you've done a great job articulating some of these changes. I know your passion is with the professional driver and making sure they stay safe. So we want to thank you for joining us again here on the road home, powered by the Trucker Service Association. Thank you so much.
Well, John, it was my pleasure, and once again, appreciate being asked to be on the show, and look forward to any other conversations that we may have in the future.
Well, TSA members, on this special partner segment, we're pleased to announce another new partner to the Trucker Service Association that you can take advantage of, Advantage Asset Tracking, and I'm pleased to be joined by the founder, Andrew Kopecki. How you doing, sir?
I'm awesome, John. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Well, one of the missions here at TSA is to bring value back to the membership. And, we were talking the other day, Andrew, as we prepared for this segment, the ELD movement, telematics, technology in and around the truck has evolved tremendously over the last 5, 10, 15 years, especially the last 2 or 3 with the ELD mandate. Talk to us a little bit how you started Advantage Asset Tracking and some of the things that you're focused on.
Yeah, absolutely. As many of your listeners know, the world of connected vehicles, like you said, has changed over the years. And I like to think that we've been along for the ride. I started Advantage Asset Tracking back in 2005, and we started working with a product in 2007 called Geotab, which is really emerged as one of the leaders in connected vehicles and telematics and ELD. And, when we got started in this business, it was, we used to screw a shoebox-sized device into the floorboards underneath the driver's seat. It cost about $1,800 to do that, and essentially what it did was provide a little blinking dot on a map. And, we found ways to really show that was innovative, and people used to think that we were Star Trek technology back then. And, now for under $100, you can see all sorts of crazy things going on in and around your vehicle. And, we like to think that we've come along that ride to help organizations take advantage of that advanced technology that we've seen over the years.
Yeah, Andrew, much like the smartphones, who would ever thought that Apple computer, a lot of us carry Apple iPhones or Android phones, that the computing power that's just in the palm of our hand now, much like what's happened in the truck, just the technology has evolved. It's unbelievable, but it's really designed to be a tool to help the professional driver do their job better, more efficient, and obviously stay in compliance. Talk a little bit about if a TSA member wanted to take advantage of some of your services, wanted to move from their current telematics or ELD provider into your solution, as a partner here at TSA, what are some of the steps they'd have to take? And talk a little bit about the installation process. And talking with you, it sounds like a pretty simple process.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we just talked on, the fact that there's an expansive array of technologies that, operators have at their disposal these days to utilize connected vehicle solutions. But at the end of the day, it's how you utilize those solutions that determines whether it's providing value or not, right? So if we've got a solution that provides all the bells and whistles, but it's not something that you need, or for whatever reason you're unable to take advantage of those services, it's ultimately a missed opportunity or in fact, a wasted investment. So as a connected vehicle consultant, Advantage Asset Tracking provides a consultation service that allows us to review your operations. What are your challenges? What are your strengths? What resources do you have to take advantage of these types of solutions? And based on that assessment, we can provide to them several options that would allow different product sets to meet different functionality pieces, again, based on those needs that we uncover through a consultation service. So as the Geotab product is one of the largest and most utilized ELD products in America, we would actually be able to provide the opportunity to install a small device. It's a simple plug-and-play unit that goes into the diagnostic port. I'm sure most of the TSA members are familiar with now. And the installation takes 20 minutes or less. We'll have the solution up and running in a matter of minutes as well. And then ultimately, it's our job to provide a unique and custom training experience, as there's some challenges to some of the people that are operating trucks. We'll know many of your listeners are actually operating a business while driving a truck at the same time. And we've worked with TSA to build an incredibly efficient and effective deployment plan here that allows people to take advantage of a very robust system without having to outlay a ton of time to learn how things work. And we're excited at the opportunity to make this process as simple as possible.
Andrew, if you could explain, I know you've built a special program just for TSA members leveraging the Geotab platform. Can you share at a high level what that program is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think one of the true values that the Trucker Service Association is providing to their members is, collective purchasing power. And ultimately, sometimes when you're a smaller fleet or an owner-operator, you don't necessarily get to command the pricing and the service levels that you would get if you kind of went at it your own. And through this partnership that we've developed with TSA and Advantage Asset Tracking, we've created the opportunity to purchase and deploy the Geotab ELD product that involves a small telematics device. The Geotab Drive ELD application, which the operator uses for compliance purposes, is a downloadable app that runs on an Android or iPhone. It can be set up in a matter of seconds. We've also provided a pricing platform for the different subscription services that Geotab offers at a rate that's normally reserved for organizations with hundreds, if not thousands of vehicles. So we're very happy to provide a service level that is providing 24/7 ELD customer support, tailored training session, deliveries and support, as well as a dedicated account manager to your operations, again, at a price point that really could not be obtained if you didn't have hundreds of vehicles in your fleet. So we're really excited at the opportunity to say, hey, we've heard the feedback from drivers, the challenges that they've had, and ultimately we've tried to put together a deployment and support and a great technology innovation package that is providing a considerable amount of value. And again, that's thanks to the hard work that the TSA folks put together to put this program in motion.
Man, that's fantastic. We really appreciate what you're doing. Well, Andrew, I know you also have a team of experts there in the office to really cover all time zones all across North America. And, we're pleased to have you on board here at the Trucker Service Association. As we wrap up this recording, it's Driver Appreciation Week. Any parting comments you have for the professional driver out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, there's small, simple things that can be done with the telematics and ELD solution to really help. And I think that, whether you're working with Advantage Asset Tracking and Geotab through this incredible offer we have with the TSA, or you're using any other type of solution, I think it's important that you recognize that you're a paying customer and you should lean on your vendors to provide the type of service and support that you expect for making such an integral part of your operations run as smoothly and efficiently as possible. So I think that, some people kind of get lost, and with this ELD mandate, there was such a wave of people utilizing this technology that a lot of vendors out there really got overwhelmed. And I think that there's a missed opportunity to serve the small fleets and the owner operators out there in the world. So I think that, we really want to make sure that you're getting the type of support and service and also access to just a core foundation of a product that you need to stay in compliance. So I think, the best advice I can give is just demand more from your vendors. And if you're unhappy, make that switch to something that might meet those needs and expectations.
TSA members, check out the show notes below. We'll put all the links to get in touch with Advantage Asset Tracking, one of the newest partners of the Trucker Service Association, designed to help you do your business better. Thank you, Andrew Kopecki, for joining us today, and have a great rest of your week, man.
Excellent. Thanks, John. Appreciate the opportunity.